Hey, welcome to Role Play Cafe. It's Dale here. We're going to do a traveling recap and reflections of last night's Joth, Chronicles of Joth, session 66, which I don't think we've nailed down a title for. But as a placeholder, I'll call it Tint and Flinder. Now, I unfortunately touched the key that stopped the recording probably about 10 minutes in and didn't notice until about 20 minutes before we wrapped up things. So I put up the bookends of the sessions up on the channel, the actual play. Now, this will be a recap as needed. Jason unfortunately couldn't make it, but I think it's a bit appropriate that I do this, especially from my character's point of view. So my character Nook is a bit of a simpleton. His intellect is like 5, right? So, yeah, I'll preface this recap with this because it was definitely some poignant moments for him in the session, as it was a reuniting of sorts. And yeah, he's if it's not apparent through APs or to the other guys, he's a bit of a well, he's obviously a simpleton, but he's got this concept that he wants to uphold the right and the good. So he's a bit noble. He's a bit more leaning toward a simpleton paladin-like character. Now, he was first charged to be squire to Lauren. So in proof, he was eager to show his ability and readiness and be approved of his station as a knight himself. So he was always taking every moment to kind of show out. Well, this didn't occur to his advantage after he had been bitten by the ghoul and was laying motionless, and I had to miss that session. So Nook remained in the room as the rest of the party delved deeper into the dungeon, and unfortunately Lauren and Theana died, allowing George and Hilda to barely escape with their lives, right? That was the end of last Chronicles. So my character Nook survived, and we started the new Joth in the City Chronicles. Now, I'd let Todd know that Nook had came back through the portal, basically through shame, and was kind of he was afraid he was going to be hunted down by those that from the previous Chronicles. So he's kind of incognito, laying low, a little bit of as a beggar, and making his way about, but carrying this weight, this shame that he had faltered. So it's almost like the penitent, exercise too, with the panhandling and the sitting there with the cup trying to get his due, but serve both ends. So he finally gets up and gets with the party and starts, even though he's questioning himself a lot. He's not so sure as in the last campaign. He's not taking the lead so much, as it were. So we get to last night. It starts after we had already finished moving this barrel and from Ralphina Gate up into Lowside, where we deposited it and had it in with a halfling vampire, and barely escaped with that. So we pick up last night down in Ralphina Gate at a pub, a bar, right? A tavern. So this little this little waif comes in and brings a message to Nook while he's sitting at the table, hands it to him, and before he can step away, Nook grabs him and looks around the room, and more so in uncertainty about being called out. But Nook's illiterate, so he asked the waif slyly if he could read it to him. So the waif does. George is the one who, John is the one who read it, ironically, which I thought was very appropriate. He read it, and it was a nice, almost poetic statement. Now, Nook's sitting there blinking, and he can't really fully realize who this is until it dawns on him. And he abruptly stands up and shifts the mugs around on the table, realizing it's George, the liar, this calling him to meet with him at a certain place. So he gets overly excited and wants to share it with his colleagues that he's running with now, that his old friend, his old companion, has called him. So he runs out into the street, looks about, doesn't know where this sword and Lyre brewery / tavern is located in the city, right? He does slide a coin to the waif, and thanks before he does that. And then Moth and Melnock walk behind him and catch up with things. Now, they do know where the sword or Moth does know where the sword and the lyre rest inside of the city, So we track a path toward there and end up having an encounter. This brute of a man comes out with 2 accomplices, one woman and another unnamed individual, but he's got a garlic necklace and some steaks and whatnot. So he seems to be of the same ilk of the ones that we had previously dispatched and thrown into the drink. Okay, now he's been tracking us down for the last 2 weeks. It's been the last 2 weeks since we played, that we had dropped off a barrel, and he's questioning us, wondering if we're in league with the Bone Weavers. Nook couldn't remember what he's saying, can't really make too much sense of it, neither can I. So listening to this, all Nook knows is he needs to get to this tavern to see his old friend before candles in, before the end of the day, because this boy, gave the message to him. He got the message yesterday, but gave it to him a day late. So we're already burning daylight as it is here. It's rocking on toward night. So Nook's shifting back and forth as we having to contend with this situation, and Moth and Melnock are speaking with this brute of a man, this bit of a barricade in front of us, as he's questioning about our intent with the barrel, moving it. And of course, we claim, as a party, that we were just charged to move it by, our employer didn't know exactly, he does know the tapestry weaver that we were charged by to move the barrel, to reclaim it and move it to the new location. Right? We didn't know what the deal is, and he said, didn't you know it was a halfling burial barrel, which I loved right when I said that. Aside from that, No, we didn't. You know, ignorance abounds continually. Anyway, so we're there. We convince him through dialogue and roles that even though at a moment when Melnock produces to show that we are, mentions that we had dispatched the halfling vamp, which the brute then names, and said she was just basically like a minion vamp, and that we had never faced a true, but we had dispatched it. So it was some of the evidence that convinced him that we necessarily wasn't working with or in conjunction with with that society, the Bone Society or whatever. But Melnock, David's character, produces the silver stake just to show that that's what he dispatched her with. When he does that, the lady beside the brute's side tries to jump toward him. Luckily, swifter hands prevailed and reined her in before she could do that. And so the brute was kind of mindful of her, and he puts her in her place and tells her to back up. But a mention later about the silver dagger makes her jump again. And Melnock says something in passing, even though he's power walking away, as we leave and part ways with him. The brute says, okay, this right there, this is sufficient for now, but we'll let this, maybe next time, it won't go this way. So basically it's just a warning to watch our step, with what we're dealing with, and don't get into their line of sight, stay out of trouble. But Nook's just ready to go see his friend. So we head on to the rest of the way over to the Sword and Lyre, home of the barely or bardly believable Mead. All right, we go inside and we see he described Hilda over at the side. Now, Nook's still trying to take this in and look around. A man comes out on the stage and quiets everyone, silences them, and raises a toast to the ones lost. And everybody drinks to it, and then hear, and he comes off the stage and walks over toward Hilda. It's George. And this is when Nook has the epiphany that it's them. He recognizes them fully, and the candlelight and the flickering, and it's my friend. So he runs toward them with that arms out thrown to embrace them. Now, George just stands there, he doesn't see it as an attack, but Hilda, she takes a step back. Now, Nook embraces his arms have this wide encompassing circle, but he only takes in George, and he's trying to gesture Hilda to come over, and then kind of just, she doesn't, and so he finishes hugging George, but he's still got this grin on this innocent grin on his face, so glad to see them, and whatnot. Then he makes this little quip that he's seen that, because the last he had seen of Hilda and George was them crawling out of that crypt, and that they had separated at that point in time and lost. So as far as he knew, everything was amiss, and he was the last survivor. So, he makes a quip about her getting a leg up in life. She's got this peg leg. So, but he, Tim is clever, even though it may not be appropriate, and done in good jest. So he's got this innocence about him, this like that, but he definitely meant it complimentary, not derogatorily. So he sits down, or they all sit down, and luckily it doesn't trigger her in any negative way, So, yeah, not so much that she would jump herself. Dangerous statement indeed. But they sit down at the table, and they're charged. See, Moth knows them, and he's worked for them before, which is John's character. And so, he didn't know that I knew them and I had adventured with them before. So at this point in time, we're connecting dots, And but Moth is he's similar to Trotter in the fact that he wants to make sure he gets a good deal. We get our fair shake. So he goes along those lines, but Nook takes it that he's being kind of disrespectful because Nook knows that George and Hilda are going to treat us right, and even Moth had stated that. So when Moth starts going, well, how much are we going to make? He's like, dismisses that. They're going to treat us right, and plus we're doing this for a noble gesture. So Nook's starting to feel his oats again about being charged with some kind of a purposeful quest to do, to fulfill his destiny, his manifest destiny that he has personally. So his talk changes to that vein, they're going to treat us right, give us an opportunity to shine. Well, he doesn't want to believe that he's dealing with some ne'er-do-well compadres in Moth and Melnock, you know what I mean? So he sees them as the same, but Moth negotiates for 500. And also, if we find it's a quest to go retrieve a jeweler from across the river on the Northern Territory that has gone missing. Right? So 500 gold pieces, which Nook always takes as a piece, even though he probably can't count all that well. So he just gestures, says, "This is fantastic. I told you he was going to treat us nice." Well, the guys jab at him as far as Melnock. We'll keep yours. Then you can do it for the cause, as it were. Pro bono. But Nook just sees them as in a way joshing at him, right? So because they wouldn't be unfair to him as well, he can't see that. So there's a naive innocence about him, and even the way he wants to view his colleagues. He is, as far as alignment goes, good, chaotic good, probably lawful good. He wants to feel like he's doing something. Otherwise, he's doing something for the good overall. Otherwise, he's kind of at a loss and despondent as he had been for months in the streets of Joth, panhandling and whatnot, as penance. So now he sees this as a second opportunity. So Moth negotiates, what if the jeweler's dead? Bring him back. We have to bring the body is, bring back the body. That'd be a hard thing to have to navigate through, What about just some kind of our word, or either some kind of if he is dead, something to show that he is. And then George says 250 if that is the case, 500 if he's alive, right? And when he's saying this, like the body would be hard to navigate, like Nook's laughing or trying to suppress a giggle because he knows that we just transported this body in a barrel, discovered earlier that it was a burial barrel, and which a little bit meta here. It gave me thoughts that George, when I saw that barely believable meat, and even George, the wax had eaten up the beehives in Bricky's Bottom, destroyed that aspect of his mead making. So what is he doing with it? But I could just see Trotter pulling a Hobbit-esque evacuation from Brickett's Bottom with all the hobbits there telling them to get in the barrels, but they're actually halfling burial barrels, and take them to Joth, ferment them, and then use that. I know it's a bit that would be a bit extreme, but I don't know. Extreme situations, I wouldn't put it past those two culprits, George being one and Trotter being the other. You know, the the duo there. Seems that they're so especially George's new character. You know, Moth is a little bit something up his sleeve, but anyway, whenever we set out, he takes us to a place to where we go across the river. Now, Nook's already said his uncle was a gondolier, so he's wanting to, every chance he takes to exercise those young years of training to navigate us across the river. But there was already a ferryman doing that, so Nook stands up there to at least feel that whole thing. But of course, that area, especially from low tide, it's gonna bring up a stench like no other. So he's standing in the bow. I said, like George Washington crossing the Delaware, and John makes a little quip about it. The spray that sewage spray, just spraying him in the face as he's going across. But aside from that, we get across, disembark, and make our way up to the jeweler's shop, the location. Now, the lights are out. The door is, I believe, halfway open. You can see through it. There's broken glass gems. We don't really see the gems yet, but George, I should say, I forgot to say that whenever the brute had first stopped us, George produces his halberd, and that was a little bit of a almost accidental, because it could have been conceived as aggressive stance, like I haven't got anything, I've just got this. And he was, oh no, that was when we disembarked. We was walking to the jewelers. We had another random encounter with 4 guards four city watch, who, as David said, we could have used earlier with the brute. But this 4 city watch actually were a little bit underhanded, dirty cops, as it were. That they said if we would donate to to their cause, or their, as far as the policing of the area, and donation toward the orphans or whatever like that, they could turn a blind eye and let us proceed, and everything would be hunky-dory, And then that's when Moth produced the halberd and said, I've only got this, and it's almost like we envisioned him leveling it at, or at least I did for my part, leveling it at him. So that it was a moment of, what do we do with this? But he was able to talk. No, this isn't a threat. We're just saying, like, no, we don't have any money whatsoever, So we ended up convincing them through rolls to let us pass and proceed, and go forthwith to the jeweler's shop, which we did around the corner. And that's when we get there, and the lights are out. The dark corner of the area. I think the door was half open. As far as I recollect, John tries to go through there first and walk in, and he tries to pass the threshold and seizes up with a cold fear and dread when he tries to step in. So Moth does a 180 and comes back, and is very shaken, visibly so. Well, this is a moment where Nook, come on, George, it's not that, I will lead you in how to be heroic and how to face your fears and whatnot. Watch me as the shining example. So I high step, as I said, trying to go through the threshold doorway, but, I fail my role as well, mechanically speaking, and just my leg freezes when I go through there. But the Nook has the same face, even though this dread just assails him. He does a 180 and plants his foot back in there. And I think Moth is right. He looks, and Nook is, got a pasty pallor, and his countenance is just, aghast, and perspiration is beaded up across his lip and his forehead. I'm describing as he goes over there and tries to shift and deflect toward Moth's needs, that we should get him to the hospital, and that might be the more heroic, appropriate thing to do, other than going in there and trying to get the jeweler for right now. That can wait. So he's going over there and nursemaiding Moth, it seems, and then that's when David's character Melnoth glances and eyes the broken glassware and the jewels laying about inside of the jewelry shop. So that definitely engages him. But the treasure lies in wait. What are you both doing? So he tries to go in himself and freezes with fear on the same failed roll. So he turns on his heel and comes out after we all kind of get our bearings, which Moth was the first one. He's looking around. He tries to go next door to knock on the door, maybe to see if he can go through the area up top to the roof and jump across. My character Nook is too out of it to really pay attention other than saving face, or putting on some kind of a false facade of pseudo bravery in that moment. The door is locked, and he looks up, and Melnock, through his earlier chastising before he stepped through the door and froze himself, a bit chastised Nook about being, like, what is wrong? So that kind of emboldens Nook to stand up again whenever, and join in whenever Moth had suggested lifting Melnock, who is smaller than either of us, up to the top of the roof and see if there's any entrance to go in through that way instead of the front door. And that's when Nook takes up, and we both hoist him up there. Even though there's a little bit of a, what are we doing again? By Melnock and a reluctance about it. We get him up there to the top. There's a chimney that he lashes a rope to, lowers down, and we climb up. While he's reconnoitering the roof, there's no entry from the top, but he does go to the back and see that there's just one level down a couple of windows that he can gain access through. So as Nook is taking the rope off of the chimney and wrapping it around his waist, he wants to let Melnock descend, rappel down the side of the building from his own waist. Okay, like that isn't gonna catapult him or slingshot him off the top of the roof, but he doesn't really know any better. I asked Moth to help hold my shoulders as we let him go down. So he does, and he enters Melnock enters the window and goes in there and looks over the place, but this cold chill just settles over him. He sees several gems which he pockets, but there's this, and the glass bits are lying around, and there's a frost that's covering him. He has this one ring, this crafted from bone, and the facing of the ring, the top of the ring, is crafted into the shape of a skull. in some kind of design. Now, Melnoth is a magic user, so he's getting some very bad vibes from this and probably from the other occurrences. So he backs out. He doesn't want to touch it. He gets away from it, backs out, and we help pull him up. Now, Nook's over there starting to yell down the chimney like, what's taking so long? Because he's getting nervous himself. But we pulls up, we pull him off, or pull him back up, then we let ourselves down. And this, we get to the ground at the back of the, no, that was when we let Melnoth down to the back of the ground. It was gated off back there. But there seems to be somebody behind the barrel, and it's an old beggar woman. And she comes out and she said, I've been following you for, trying to find you for 2 weeks. Yeah, I forgot the name of the individual, but it is a contact that I believe a mage or a priest or so, a contact that Melnoth has inside the city that has been looking for him. And Melnoth raises an eyebrow and is like, looking for me? Why? Why would he be? And then that's when Todd drew the curtains on the session. So, very good session. Like I said, poignant and a bit of a redemption arc, or at least the initial igniting of that redemption arc for Nook. It as far as the other two characters, it may have been a cautionary tale for Melnoth, and a slight diversion for Moth that didn't pan out lucratively. So, even though it did for Melnoth, that he pocketed some things, but and there's a potential for an unknown as Melnoth's contact finally found us and got the message through to us. But it shifted a little bit with my character Nook's getting back into the way he used to be. He's not necessarily going to be probably as quiet. He's going to feel emboldened to lead the charge, to let others see him, because as a fledgling knight or somebody who wishes to give hope to the people, he's got to be a little bit in the spotlight and do courageous works to inspire others in part too. He still will maintain personally, or it's a useful fiction for him to believe that his colleagues are like-minded, so he will everything that they do, obviously he either interprets as a joke or not really serious, or just playing devil's advocate, or any myriad of things that he can interpret it as. But he feels like he's in with a good group, not any kind of a devious group, so that's how he interacts with them. So there's a little simplistic naivete that is around him, but he doesn't. In a way, like when he encountered the halfling vamp, he can almost face daunting situations with an unawareness of the danger of it, but also, it's just over an abundance of hope that you keep things, the candle burning. It's just it had flickered and somewhat dimmed, and he had to reflect on what had happened with Lauren and the rest. Now, when I say there was a poignant moment to me, was when we were sitting in the bar, George and and Hilda's brewery, that around the table, Todd said that Nook happens to notice something written on the table because it was a bunch of names carved out. You know, right when they sat down after George from the stage had silenced everyone to give respect, you know, a moment of silence for the fallen. And you know, Nook glances down and sees a bit of an older carving than the rest on the table, right? Now, when I look at it, I nudge while Moth is talking. I nudge Melnoth, kind of like, you know, glance down at those two carvings. What does it say? Now, Todd relayed something very. It was two names of Lauren and Theana that had fallen so others may live, you know. And they were the impetus for this, you know, moment of silence, and the rest of the fallens that were inscribed on the table, and probably other tables around, were in honor of that. But they obviously were what allowed Hilda and George to live on and carry on in the city of Joth. So I thought it was cool that David was reading that to me, and then he just looks. He doesn't read it, as he knows he's dealing with a bit of a simpleton. And probably his character doesn't really see the weight of what the text is. Us as players do. But he just looks, he's just a couple of martyrs, you know. And then Nook doesn't inquire past beyond that, even though he's looking at the symbols of the letterings, and there has to be some kind of, like earlier when he was trying to read, or he was looking, and he marvels at people being able to read text and tries to find a pattern in them or similarities. And that was obviously what drew his attention to the table, you know. So I can see him trying to make heads or tails of different symbols, you know, especially, you know, in tombs or ruins, you'll see these symbols, and they're almost like magical, but people can read them, right? But he's a little bit ashamed. He don't want to admit that he can't. So whenever Melnoth says this, he laughs and says knowingly, like, yeah, just a couple of martyrs, even though he doesn't want to push it and ask even what a martyr is, you know. So I thought that was so cool that he was so close to even finding out, you know, that his kind of ignorance keeps him restricted into what he knows, and he has to work. As a player, has to work from that character's limited knowledge, and he feels in that void with the hope of carrying on. Anyway, I'll wrap it up here. Great game, Todd. I loved when you said the halfling burial barrels, and I was like, oh, geez, it's perfect. But anyway, until next time, my friends, I'll let y'all go. Bye-bye.